Consider what you've just learned, and with that in mind, let's go ahead and move on to the food guides. So the dietary reference intakes and the AMDRs, these are more so a detailed instruction manual. MyPlate and the food guides, these are the 3-minute, very simple how-to YouTube video. So for this, Food Pyramid, MyPlate, these are the most recent models that we've had. Again, these are more practical models, and it's changed throughout time over the past 100 years to meet current nutrition needs and to meet the demands of the environment as well. Here we have the visual of MyPlate. You have vegetables, fruits, grains, protein, and dairy. And if you don't pay attention to the types of foods that you get in this plate, then you'll still get balance, but you still won't get the full nutritional benefit. So, for example, if we were to have a glass of fruit juice, a half a container of peas for the vegetables, if we had bologna for the protein, and we had white rice for the grains, and maybe a cup of chocolate milk on the side, we'd probably get a good balance of the macronutrients, and we'd get all the different food groups, but we just would not get a lot of nutrients from each of those food groups. They wouldn't pack their full punch and give us all the nutritional benefit that they possibly could. So if we can incorporate nutrient density into this, into each of the food groups, and get that relative balance, that's when we pack a really, really strong nutritional punch. Get a good balance of nutrients, get consistent levels of energy, and then also get lots of vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, other nutrients that are beneficial and very strongly, positively impact our health. There are a few different messages that are linked to MyPlate, to each of the different food groups, and then there's also a little bit extra on top of that too. So the ones that are linked to the food groups, first of all, you have make half of your plates fruits and vegetables, and then within that, focus on getting whole fruits as opposed to canned fruits or fruit juices. Fruits in their natural form are best. For vegetables, vary your veggies. So get lots of different colors, lots of different types of vegetables. Probably a good idea to emphasize the non-starchy ones. For the grains, make half or more of your grains whole grains. And if you're in the store buying bread or pasta, look for 100% whole wheat. For dairy, go lower fat, so either low fat or fat-free milk, yogurt, or cheese. For protein, vary your protein routine. So instead of just getting the same meats over and over again, get vegetarian sources of protein. And then finally, for all the different food groups, drink and eat less added sugars, sodium, and saturated fat. Here is one more visual that goes into a little bit more depth about how to get the most nutrient density out of each of the food groups. On this slide, we have a list of the different grains. If you look at the bottom right, what you will see is the whole grain. And so with this, you have the outer layer, which is the bran, and that's going to have fiber, B vitamins, and trace minerals. You have the germ, which is the little thing on the inside left. That has lots of vitamins as well. It has a few minerals. It has phytonutrients, nutrients that we don't know exactly what they do or exactly how much of them we need, but we do know that they do have some type of benefit for our health. And then finally, you have the endosperm. This provides energy, but not a lot of nutrients. It has some B vitamins, some protein, but not a lot of nutrients. Now, what happens when we process grains is we strip the bran and we strip the germ. So we're pretty much just left with carbohydrates, a little bit of protein, and then some B vitamins. So we have all of the carbohydrates and calories, very few comparatively, amounts of vitamins, minerals, other essential nutrients. Now, when foods are enriched, they're going to be processed. They're going to have a lot of these nutrients taken away, and then more nutrients will be added back in, actually. However, they're not adding all the nutrients back in, especially not the phytonutrients. Not adding all these nutrients back in, so you are going to affect pretty significantly the nutrient quality of a food when you process it, even if you do enrich it. Carbohydrates are all going to break down into sugar. Now the goal for carbohydrate breakdown should be a slow release of that carbohydrate once we consume it. If we have a very quick breakdown, it's going to lead to more inconsistent levels of energy. Now, this isn't necessarily the rule for all unprocessed carbohydrates. There are some unprocessed carbohydrates like potatoes that are still nutrient dense, but they break down very quickly inside of us. However, with unprocessed grains, we're more likely to have a slower, more gradual, more consistent release of energy. And with processed grains, we're more likely to break down carbohydrates really quickly to cause our blood sugar to go really high and then crash and bottom out and be really low. So the higher glycemic index carbs, and generally the more processed carbohydrates, these cause blood sugar highs and then drops. Low glycemic or unprocessed carbohydrates or whole grains, these are more likely to cause a slight rise, an appropriate rise you could say, in energy, and then a slower breakdown and slower release so that you have more consistent levels of energy and that hormones are released appropriately. The vegetable group compared to the rest of the groups is the largest group. For vegetables, it's important to note that nutritionally there are two main types. There is starchy and there's non-starchy. And the starchy ones are going to break down more like grains. And so I personally like to put those in the grain category. However, they're still vegetables, so things like potatoes, corn, pumpkin, squash, those have higher amounts of carbohydrates, higher amounts of sugar. The non-starchy vegetables are much lower in carbohydrates and sugar, but they tend to have more nutrients, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals. So non-starchy vegetables are lower in calories, lower in carbohydrates, but loaded with other essential minerals. So for the vegetable group, it's important to get as many non-starchy vegetables as possible. Also noteworthy is that raw foods are going to have the highest nutrient content. Frozen will be slightly less, but potentially better if we have raw vegetables that end up staying in our refrigerator for long periods of time, like I sometimes do. Frozen can be better in that case because they're going to maintain their nutrient content longer. Raw will deteriorate as they grow old and get rotten. And then canned is last. Canned is the lowest in nutrient content, but it's still not too bad. Vegetables are really good because they promote appetite control and weight maintenance. They also have large amounts of antioxidants. These antioxidants help boost our mental health and they help to prevent against chronic disease because lots of chronic diseases are inflammation based. And then vegetables, because they have large amounts of fiber and water, they are more likely to promote optimal GI function by moving things along and helping things pass through. For the fruit group, fruits have lots of carbohydrates and even sugar. And that's why it's important that we focus on whole fruits, because whole fruits are going to have the carbohydrates and they're going to have the sugar, but they're going to have other stuff too, like the phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, fiber. Whereas the more processed fruits, fruit cups or fruit juice or canned fruit, it's going to be higher in sugar and it's going to be lower in these essential minerals, or minerals, vitamins, fiber, phytonutrients. The vitamins from fruits help to fight and reduce inflammation. And it's important to note that The vegetables and fruits do make up half of the plate, but fruits make up a significantly smaller portion than vegetables do. So we should emphasize vegetables a lot more so than we do fruits. The next group is protein. And the message for protein is that we should go lean with protein. The problem is that can be a little bit difficult considering the different types of sources of protein and the amount that each of these sources has. So the animal-based protein, one, it has much more protein in it per serving than plant proteins do. So for example, if you look at the picture on the bottom right, you see one 3-ounce serving of meat. It's about the size of a deck of cards. That 3-ounce serving is going to provide you with about 20 grams of protein, which is a pretty substantial amount. To get that same amount of protein from a high protein vegetarian food, you would need about 3 times that amount of beans. So a very, very substantial amount of beans. Now, it's still very possible to meet the amount of protein that you should be getting, meet protein guidelines from a vegetarian or vegan diet. However, it is a lot more challenging. So protein, it plays a role in building bones and mainly muscles and tissue. It also has enzymatic function and also promotes the development of hormones. We have MyPlate, and a little while after this came out, Harvard came out with their own healthy eating plate, which has a few small variations from MyPlate. What you'll notice is that the vegetable section is even bigger than MyPlate. MyPlate vegetable section is big to begin with. Harvard's is even bigger. Harvard's does not have any dairy, and it also has a way to incorporate healthy fats by adding in the healthy oils on the top left of the screen. Also in the bottom left, something that my pyramid had, which was the in between the food pyramid and MyPlate, is a reminder to stay active. Harvard has an extra reminder for us to do that, whereas MyPlate does not. Here's a closer look at the Harvard plate, and again, kind of goes into a little bit more detail that MyPlate does not cover. And then this model has a little bit of instructions for each of the food groups to provide a very basic but concrete overview for how to incorporate these types of foods. So I really like this. I think it very succinctly, very accurately portrays everything that we need to get from a nutritional standpoint from our meals. But you can compare the two and you can decide which you think is better. That's a wrap for this. We're going to be moving on to digestion, so stay tuned.